Welcome to Beekeeping Today podcast presented by Bee Culture. Beekeeping Today podcast is your source for beekeeping news, information, and entertainment. I'm Jeff Ott.
And I'm Kim Flatham.
Hey, Jeff and Kim. Today's sponsor is Global Patties. They're a family-operated business that manufactures protein supplement patties for honeybees. It's a good time to think about honeybee nutrition. Feeding your hives protein supplement patties will ensure that they produce strong and healthy colonies by increasing brood production and overall honey flow. Now is a great time to consider what type of patty is right for your area and your honeybees. Global offers a variety of standard patties as well as custom patties to meet your needs. No matter where you are, Global is ready to serve you out of their manufacturing plants in Airdrie, Alberta, and in Butte, Montana, or from distribution depots across the continent. Visit them today at www.globalpatties.com.
Thanks, Sherry, and thank you, Global Patties. You know, each week we get to talk about how much we appreciate our sponsor support, and we know you'd rather we get right to talking about beekeeping. However, our great sponsors are critical to help making all of this happen. From the transcripts, the hosting fees, the software, the hardware, the microphones, the subscriptions, the recorders, they enable each episode. So with that, thanks to Bee Culture Magazine for continuing their presenting sponsorship of this podcast. Bee Culture has been the magazine for American beekeeping since 1873. Subscribe to Bee Culture today. Hey everybody, thanks for joining us. We're really happy you're here. Before we get started, just a quick reminder to subscribe or follow Beekeeping Today podcast and give us a 5-star rating. It really does help. Also, we are now adding complete transcripts of each episode on the website after the show notes. Check them out. You can also leave questions and comments online under each show. You can leave a comment, ask a question, reply to a question, ours or our listeners. Click on Leave a Comment at the top of the episode's show notes to join the discussion. Have you listened to an episode and thought, that person sounds really interesting, and I'd like to know more about them? Well, now you can. Each episode links to a guest profile. Each profile has a guest photo, bio, contact information, including Instagram and Twitter details if they have them. Check it out. And finally, share the podcast with your beekeeping friends, email them links, or mention it at your next beekeeper meeting. Hey everybody, thanks again for joining us. Kim will be here shortly, along with our guest, Dr. Kelly Kulhanek, assistant professor at the Washington State University in Pullman, Washington. She's working on multiple projects, and we'll be talking to her about the Asian Giant Hornet and the indoor wintering of honeybees. Hey, it's a great topic for the middle of summer, isn't it? Hey, happy Pollinator Week! The good folks at Pollinator Partnership have worked to get the third week of June designated as National Pollinator Week. They've planned a series of events and activities for individuals, groups, and corporations to help highlight the value of all pollinators in all of our lives and on the environment. Get more information and learn how you can participate in their activities by visiting the website at www.pollinator.org. Not only is this the start of Pollinator Week, but it's also the start of something else pretty fun. Learn more about that later on in the show when we're talking with Kim. Sure hope your summer is going well and the honey flow is strong. Have you supered yet? How many times? You know, I used to provide an upper entrance to supers during the flow on my stronger colonies, either by moving the top super back a half inch or so, or using a hole drilled in the front of the super just below the handhold. When it wasn't needed, I'd slide the super back in place or put a cork in the hole. This spring, I received a couple nice but small entrance discs along with my Bee Smart Designs insulated top and inner cover. In hopes of a repeat of last year's strong blackberry flow, I drilled some 5/8-inch holes in a few honey supers and secured the discs in place so I could open and close the super as needed. I hope these discs come in handy, if there ever is a flow this year. Do you use upper entrances on your honey supers during the flow? Do you think that's a good idea or a bad idea? Let us know in the comments of the website. Okay, let's get on with the show, but first, a quick word from our friends at Strong Microbials who have released a brand new extended release probiotic, Super DFM Extend.
Hey, beekeepers! Many times during the year, honeybees encounter scarcity of floral sources. As good beekeepers, we feed our bees artificial diets of protein and carbohydrates to keep them going during those stressful times. What is missing, though, are key components. The good microbes necessary for a bee to digest the food and convert it into metabolic energy. Only Super DFM Honeybee by strong microbials can provide the necessary microbes to optimally convert the artificial diet into energy necessary for improving longevity, reproduction, immunity, and much more. Super DFM Honeybee is an all-natural probiotic supplement for your honeybees. Find it at strongmicrobials.com or at fine bee supply stores everywhere.
Hey, everybody, and while you're at the Strong Microbial site, make sure you click on and subscribe to The Hive, their regular newsletter full of interesting beekeeping facts and product updates. Hey, everybody, welcome back to the show. Sitting across the virtual Zoom Beekeeping Today podcast table right now is Kelly Kulhanek. And she's here from WSU, Washington State University, over in Pullman. And if you've been listening to the show for the last year or so, you know that the Asian Giant Hornet is on the doorstep. And Kelly's been working with WSU as an assistant professor, and part of her responsibility is working with Asian Giant Hornet. Kelly, long opening, but welcome to Beekeeping Today podcast.
Thank you very much. Very happy to be here.
Good to see you again, Kelly.
Yeah, you too.
Yeah, Kelly has been with us once or twice before.
I think just once, but I think it was in March of 2020, like the very, very beginning of the pandemic. We were all just learning how to use Zoom. So it's crazy to see how far we've come. But yeah.
Yeah, we're all so used to Zoom now. That's for sure.
Yes. Yeah.
So the Asian Giant Hornet is definitely a newsmaker and definitely of concern for beekeepers here in Washington State and anybody along the West Coast who are within the zone of encroachment or zone of potential habitat for the Asian Giant Hornet. So what are you doing at WSU in this, with dealing with the Asian Giant Hornet?
Yeah, so there are several researchers at WSU who are working really closely with the Washington State Department of Agriculture to, conduct some of this sort of baseline preliminary research about how far the Asian Giant Hornet could spread, how concerned we need to be, looking into different control methods we could use, pheromone trapping and things like that. And so, my role as really kind of someone who does a lot of extension and outreach is to work with beekeepers who are really concerned about Asian Giant Hornet and to help them, sort of mentally prepare themselves and to understand what they're looking for so that if they do encounter Asian Giant Hornet, they can respond quickly and appropriately and make sure that we're able to take care of it.
And so what are you doing in that regards? I mean, that's everything from hide in the closet and cover your head with a cover or to trap and abate?
Yeah. So for the vast majority of people, they do not need to be concerned at all about Asian Giant Hornet yet. So far, it's still only in very far northwestern Washington and adjacent British Columbia, right across the border. So, we get a lot of phone calls and a lot of concern from people about Asian Giant Hornet, but usually they're not from people in that area. So that's kind of the first thing we say is if you're not in that immediate area, it's something else is going on. You don't have to be concerned about that. And so that is kind of nice to alleviate that fear from people right away. And so, the other thing we're doing is just trying to put out information about what Asian Giant Hornet actually does to honeybee colonies so that people can identify it really quickly and report it to Washington State Department of Ag quickly so that they can respond. And so, I don't think that a lot of fear is necessarily warranted. I don't think we've had any confirmed cases of Asian Giant Hornet attacking honeybee colonies yet in the U.S. So we're still just using an abundance of caution. But most of the time, what I'm trying to do is just make people less afraid.
Well, one of the things, of course, is how do I put this? The possibility of an overwintered queen getting man moved to either someplace in Washington or Northeast Ohio or wherever. And because I've gotten calls here in Ohio from two people that said they saw one in their backyard this spring, and on further questioning, you find out it's the other big hornet that we have here in Ohio, and they'd never seen one before. So when you see that one, which is half the size of a giant Asian hornet, if you haven't seen the giant Asian hornet, you go, "Oh my God, there's a killer hornet out here, and it's on my back porch."
Yes, absolutely.
So, but where I'm going is, what is the probability of that actually happening when an overwintered queen getting shipped to someplace?
Yeah, great question. I mean, I think things like that are always possible. I think the probability right now is pretty low, especially because they haven't expanded to that great of numbers, even in the area where they are. So, it's all very early stages, very early days. And I think we should all have our eyes peeled and, have access and look at these resources that help you identify an Asian giant hornet compared to these other large black and yellow insects that we see very frequently. And there are lots of those available online with lots of really great pictures of comparisons of what they look like. So I think, it's prepare for the worst, but hope for the best. And so that's kind of what we try to get people to do.
Well, that's good advice, I guess. Prepare for the worst and hope for the best. What are you guys doing now in Washington to prepare for the worst?
Yeah, so the Washington State Department of Ag has lots of different programs trying to track these things. They've found a few nests and eliminated the nests. And I think, they're kind of doing everything in their power they can to keep it from spreading. And then, several different researchers are working on different methods to try to control them and mitigate them and, prevent them from breeding properly and things like that. Again, my role is kind of just to get information out there to beekeepers and work with beekeepers who are concerned. And so, one of the things we've done is put out this fact sheet through WSU Extension, and it's free online, publicly available. And it helps you understand what Asian giant hornet damage looks like to honeybee colonies and how you can differentiate, the symptoms of that from the symptoms of yellow jackets, European hornets, mice, lots of those other things that feed on our bees and kind of result in a big pile of dead bees outside the front of your colony. Because that's usually what people see. And then they panic and they call us, is like lots of dead bees outside the front of their colony. And so, the fact sheet has lots of photos and even a flow chart that will help you walk through the symptoms you're seeing and help you understand whether or not it's Asian giant hornet or something else.
Is there a key indicator? So if I go out to my hive this afternoon and see a pile of dead bees, before I panic?
Yes. So, typically what we see is lots of dead bees outside the entrance. And usually you can tell that they've kind of been accumulating over a few days or a few weeks even. There are some that are older and dusty and kind of starting to decay a little bit. And then there are some that are fresh. And so in an Asian giant hornet situation, you would have a lot of bee death all at once in the same day. So it'd be like all of a sudden there's a lot of dead bees. But also, I think understanding how the Asian giant hornet attacks the honeybee colonies is really key because it occurs in different phases. And so the first phase is where they're kind of acting like European hornets, where they're just hovering outside the colony entrance and picking off bees one by one that are just coming and going. And in that situation, they're not killing the bee right outside the colony. They take it away to a nearby tree or back to their nest. They do not kill it right outside the colony. So you're not going to see much bee death at your colonies during that first initial phase where the Asian giant hornets are just kind of picking up little snacks.
Yeah, scoping it out.
Yes. And then when it escalates is what's called the slaughter phase. It's a very scary, threatening name, where the multiple hornets will be recruited to your colony and they'll invade the colony. They'll kill a whole bunch of bees all at once. That's when you'll have like a lot of dead bees right around your colonies. But the Asian giant hornets stay in the hive at that point. They stay in there for days while they clean out all the brood, kill all the bees. So they're actually occupying at that point these colonies. And so that's the dead giveaway, is that there's actually hornets in your colony. And so at that point, they're very, very defensive, and it's very dangerous to approach. So we tell people to really exercise caution. But again, we have not seen that in the United States yet. So
they do take over the hive, and they become defensive of that specific hive. That's right. You would know it right away if you opened the top and they were in there.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And so, usually what beekeepers see is, kind of those dead bees outside the hive that have been accumulating for a while. Lots of them will have holes in the thorax or missing heads. And a lot of that can be yellow jacket damage. We have lots of yellow jacket problems here in Eastern Washington. We've also had mice come and feed on the dead bees outside the front of the colony, and they'll bore that little hole in the thorax. So, there are lots of other things that like to snack on our bees besides Asian Giant Hornet.
That's not good news.
Yeah, I was going to say, how do you reply to that? That's kind of a nightmare in many ways.
I wonder then, what are you guys going to be doing right now, June on, to locate, and are you trapping? What are you doing to A, find them, and B, get rid of them?
Yeah, great question. So, again, me personally and my sort of colleagues in the bee program at Washington State University are more focused on the beekeeper side of things. And the Washington State Department of Ag are the ones who are really going out doing the trapping. They have, I think lots and lots of traps out. They're looking for those individuals. And then when they find one in a trap, they can actually locate the colony and try to destroy it. But they also ask anyone who thinks they might see Asian Giant Hornet to report it to their website. And so, I think a lot of what we do is say it's probably not Asian Giant Hornet, but if anybody has any suspicion, we want them to report it. It's better to just be cautious and report it so that Washington State Department of Ag can get there and investigate.
Better Bee knows that Varroa mites are public enemy number one for our honeybees. If you are not treatment-free, your Varroa mite management plan should include a variety of medications to prevent resistance to treatment. Head over to betterbee.com/Varroa to get your sugar roll and alcohol wash monitoring kits, as well as your Formic Pro, oxalic acid, Apovar, and other mite management medications. Let Better Bee help you protect your bees from Varroa.
Visit Better Bee today, your partners in better beekeeping.
You said that the slaughter phase, I think is what you called it, when because they're all inside, a beekeeper may open a hive and not know they're there. It isn't looking, isn't suspecting, and isn't paying attention, basically. I've never done that, of course. But so I take the top off, and I just always look down through the inner cover hole, and all I see are the bodies of giant Asian hornets scrambling around just through the little inner cover hole. My guess is you put the top back on and run.
Yes. Yeah, I would say, put the top back on, get out of there, call WSDA immediately.
So
and don't people try to eradicate them themselves, not here in the US, but over in Asia, people try to eradicate them themselves, and it's just not a good idea. So, especially, we're not equipped with the proper equipment. When they go out to destroy one of these nests, they're wearing not a regular bee suit. They can sting right through a regular bee suit. So they're wearing these huge moon suits that are, really thick. So yeah, definitely best to just get out of there, not approach again until you call for help.
I know some beekeepers around here have adopted putting a mesh in front of the hive entrance in order, thinking it'll keep the Asian Giant Hornet out of the hive. They're putting a half-inch hardware cloth over the entrances. Is that something that you are recommending to beekeepers to do? Is that effective?
I think, that definitely can't hurt unless it's restricting, the foraging capacity of the colony when we have big nectar flows and things like that. And usually I'll say the Asian Giant Hornet is picking on honeybee colonies kind of later in the summer when they get kind of more desperate for protein, like August, September. So, for most places in the US, there's not strong honey flows at that time. So hopefully that's not an issue. But I think screens are kind of a good practice in general. It makes the colony easier to defend from lots of other things, from other robbing honeybee colonies that can spread mites around, from yellow jackets, from European hornets. So I think that that's a good practice for a lot of reasons.
And mice too. And mice.
Yes. And mice. Yep. Yeah, we have big skunk problems also out here, which is new to me. We didn't really have skunk problems in Maryland. So
you don't mean that the skunks out there are larger than other skunks?
No, they are big skunks.
Yeah, big skunks.
The problems are bigger. Yeah.
That's funny.
Well, I tried,
No,
So it looks like you guys are really kind of on top of this. You're maintaining, you are maintaining the occupied area and stopping them from spreading, mostly by monitoring traps and beekeepers paying attention. You've been working with this long enough. What's going to be happening 5 years from now?
Yeah, great question. And it's really hard to say. I think, again, we're hoping for the best here, that everybody kind of got on top of it right away, and new control management methods are kind of in the works. So I think we're really hoping we could eradicate it pretty quickly. But invasive species are really, really tough, and there's always a chance that they'll stick around for a while. I think it's likely they'll stay in a relatively small range, and hopefully we won't see much, widespread, Asian Giant Hornet all the way across the country. I think if they do spread at all, I think it should be relatively slow. So hopefully we can hope for that at least.
I'm guessing the people in Canada, because that's where it was found, are doing the same sort of monitoring and controlling.
Yes, I believe so. Yep.
Because it could move east in Canada and then south into Montana or North Dakota or one of those states.
Yes.
Over Lake Erie and on into Medina.
There you go. It's going to be by August, right?
Yeah, there you go.
Well, it's good to know. Are you and your Canadian contemporaries working together on this? Because this thing is right on the border, isn't it?
Yeah, I think they do have a lot of communication and sort of a lot of joint ventures because, believe it or not, these insects don't know there's a border. They don't respect the border. So, I think it is important that we continue to work together.
So what else are you working on? You just started your time there at WSU. What will your duties include?
Yeah, so I came here in August of 2020, and I started as a postdoc researcher working for Dr. Brandon Hopkins. And so he does a lot of work with commercial beekeeping management practices. And one of the big focuses of his program has been this idea of indoor storage of honeybee colonies. So I did a lot of work on that. And so it's been super interesting, and I really didn't know much about it before I came here. But we estimate now that almost 500,000 colonies are stored indoors over winter before almond pollination, and most of those are stored in Idaho. So these beekeepers build these facilities or rent space in these temperature-controlled facilities. I think one facility holds up to 80,000 colonies. Yeah. So, it's really interesting. And they just prefer it to overwintering outdoors for a few different reasons. I think they enter full dormancy. They're not consuming food. The mites aren't reproducing. So if you get them really nice and healthy before they go into indoor storage, then they come out really nice and healthy, and you get great grades in almonds, good price for your colonies in almonds. So, it's relatively recent that it's gained a lot of popularity in the United States. And so the beekeepers have a lot of questions about sort of how to maximize their bang for their buck out of these situations. So, they're curious about using these facilities to treat for mites. They're curious about how high of carbon dioxide levels can we get to in here, and if there are benefits to that or if it's harmful. So just sort of lots of this preliminary work to sort of really fine tune indoor storage to make sure that these beekeepers are getting the most they can out of it, which has been really interesting. And then, yes, in my new position, I just got hired as an assistant professor. My first day was 1 week ago, was June 1st.
Congratulations.
And so this position is sort of a combination of research and extension, and it's funded by the Washington State Legislature. So it will be very specific to serving Washington State beekeepers. And, I think we'll be looking at things like really optimizing mite control in the state of Washington with Washington climates and honey flows and things like that. Really coming out with a lot of best practices for Washington State beekeepers. We want to work with growers of lots of Washington specialty crops to make sure that their pollination of their crops is optimized and the bees' health while they're there is optimized. So yeah, I haven't got much done in my first week, but lots to come. Yes.
One of the things that I've talked to several people who are involved in the indoor wintering, and we had, what's her name from Tucson here, Gloria DeGranda Hoffman was here talking about it also. And
John Miller and
John Miller also.
Yeah, the Millers are like huge pioneers of indoor storage for sure.
What I'm hearing is probably within 4 or 5 years, any beekeeper in the United States that wants to indoor winter will be able to find a facility to handle his bees. It's that popular, it's that healthy, and all things considered, it's that inexpensive. That sound about right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it really is booming, and there's lots of interest in it. And, a lot of these beekeepers build these huge facilities that house their whole operation, and then they have room to rent space as well. So I think for people who have maybe a slightly smaller operation or don't want to put in the upfront cost of building their own place, it is pretty easy to find rentable space. And we even have people in the business now who are not beekeepers, who came from onion storage or apple storage or things like that, who are not beekeepers, and they're just building these facilities specifically to serve this need because the interest and the demand is so high. And I think it is, cost benefit wise, maybe not right for everyone in every operation. So, I think that's something to consider. There is an upfront investment of changing your business model to work this way. But yeah, the beekeepers who like it do it really well. And so, I think the main thing they always stress to us is that these indoor storage facilities are a hotel, not a hospital. So basically, if you put crappy colonies in, you're going to get crappy colonies out when you take them out in January to go to almonds. So they have to be really proactive with their management, have to have really good frames of bees, really heavy colonies, really low mite loads, and they're working on that as early as August to get these colonies to go into these storages in October and November. So I think it just kind of forces them to be really good beekeepers across the board. And then they put in these really excellent colonies into storage, and it just helps them maintain that really good health. So when they come out, they look really excellent when they go to almonds.
And almost all of them always come out too. That's, definitely the advantage. Yeah. You've got strong colonies that are healthy, and you've got, single digit losses.
They kind of cull out all the garbage before it goes into storage, and then you're not paying to store basically dead outs. So yeah.
One of the things that I heard that was an issue with these is that, at least in some states, FSA, Farm Service Agency, USDA government FSA outfit, they have options to provide low-interest loans to farmers for storage, grain storage, milk storage, what have you. But at least initially, they weren't talking to beekeepers. They weren't going to help provide that kind of service for beekeepers. Do you have any knowledge of that or advice?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't have much knowledge of that topic, but I think that kind of thing happens to beekeepers and bees a lot, where we're not classified as livestock and we're not classified as plants. And so I think we fall through the cracks of a lot of those sort of governmental programs. We run into it as researchers all the time where we want to apply for funding and we don't really fit in any of the categories. And the animal people tell us, no, you apply to the plants people, and, vice versa. So yeah, it's frustrating. And I think that happens a lot, but hopefully as it becomes more popular, the demand will get people's attention and they'll have to work with us a little bit.
Perhaps because just this last week, California decided that bees and bumblebees were fish. Maybe we can.
I saw that.
Maybe we can move in a different direction.
I know. That reminds me of. Do you remember when I think some school district classified pizza as a vegetable because it has tomato sauce on it? It's like the same thing that bumblebees are fish. I think it's because all invertebrates are like listed under the fish category, which is just doesn't make sense. But yeah, bees just constantly get pushed from category to category.
Well, this may be something beekeeping organizations want to look into, because if indeed this practice continues, it can only help the people who are building them and the people who are renting them from the people who built them. So if I can get a low interest loan, I can charge less, beekeepers will pay less, and they will have better returns all the way around. So if you're listening out there, go knock on your local FSA door.
And it's very similar technology to grain storages and other types of, some beekeepers use potato and apple storages because they're empty at that time of year. So there's no reason that it shouldn't be considered the same thing.
Are you developing a series of standards for the indoor storage so that I could, as a beekeeper, if I want to develop my own, or maybe even use that onion storage facility and want to make sure that they're meeting certain standards for bees, are you developing those standards for beekeepers?
Yeah, that's a good question and a great idea. We should. And I think, it's kind of an interesting place for us to be as researchers, because a lot of it is like very specific HVAC knowledge. And so a lot of these beekeepers work with HVAC companies to help build these facilities to make sure that they function properly. And there are kind of general guidelines for what temperature you want to maintain, what level humidity. The carbon dioxide level is kind of a big one because bees generate a lot of carbon dioxide in these closed facilities. So I think we are doing research to fine tune some of those things. But there are sort of general guidelines out there, but I don't think they're summarized in a written document anywhere. So that can be one of my new projects as an assistant professor to put that together.
part of your extension program would be to develop those.
Absolutely.
That would be good information to have available for everybody.
Yeah, and we do. It is out there. We have a series of YouTube videos that we made in partnership with Project Apis M. And so they have a whole indoor storage page on their website with like blogs. We had a whole webinar about it where we had beekeepers who use indoor storage talk about it, and we had HVAC specialists talk about it. So it is available in those video formats, but we haven't summarized it into a written guide yet. We have talked about summarizing all this into sort of like a best practices guide for indoor storage, and also kind of like a decision support tool to help beekeepers decide if indoor storage is right for them, if it's going to be worth it, if it fits well into their operation, and when to use it, like when to go in, when to come out. All those things I think can be optimized. So it's in the works, and hopefully we'll make a lot of progress in that in the coming years.
Along with things like how big a compressor do you need to run the ventilation system if you've got 80,000 colonies or 20,000 colonies, those sorts of things. They're probably available in these resources you just mentioned, but if you're right, if you could standardize them in one place so everybody was using the same thing, that would help. But I can see, I wouldn't know where to start on how big does this unit have to be to ventilate this thing 3 times an hour or 10 times a day or whatever the recommendations are. So that would be a good place to, good piece of paper to have.
Yes.
You start with Google.
Yeah.
The start of every research project is Google.
Absolutely. Yep.
And Wikipedia. It's been a pleasure having you back on the show, and look forward to having you back. And even the possibility, if you're at the WA, Washington State Beekeepers Association meeting later this fall. Even chatting with you then.
Oh, great. Yeah, I'll be there. I will be there.
All right, very good.
And I guess just one other thing is you begin to develop a standardized thing for indoor wintering. When you're close, let us know, and we'll talk to you again, and you can share some of the things that you found that you didn't know today.
Great. Yeah, that sounds great.
All right, thanks a lot, and we'll talk to you soon.
Okay, thank you very much, guys. Talk to you later.
Thanks, Kelly.
It was fun to get reconnected with Kelly to find out, everything that's going on in Washington State. It's fun to know that Kelly's working on that problem as well, and we'll be helping the beekeepers through the extension program.
Yeah, and she's been there, a whole week? And no, I guess she was there before she got her promotion to assistant professor. So she has, but she hasn't been there a long time. But she seems pretty involved in both the Giant Hornet program and indoor wintering. Yeah,
the indoor wintering, as we've talked to John, is I'm surprised how big it's become. I shouldn't be, but it is kind of fun, exciting to see how fast it's grown and how important it is. So,
well, from a beekeeper's perspective, it is incredibly cost efficient. If I put 2,000 colonies in and I come back out with 1,950 of them, I'm going to be a lot better off than 2,000 colonies sitting out in the snow someplace.
Yeah. Oh, I think it's fantastic. It's a great program. And of course, as we pointed out in one of our episodes with John, is that, beekeepers have been keeping bees inside. It's not a brand new development.
Yeah.
They've been keeping them in the winters and cellars and storage for many, many years.
Yep. And caves and what have you. Well, the facilities that are using now, and they're getting more complex every winter, but they can control the temperature to 0.5 degree and CO2 and humidity almost that well. So from a bee's perspective, I'm in heaven, and from a beekeeper's perspective, I'm going to become almond pollination.
I'd like to go visit one of those facilities one of these days too. It'd be interesting.
I was in one in Idaho several years ago in the summer, so it was essentially empty.
So, Kim, this is Pollinator Week. Happy Pollinator Week.
Yeah, it's a double anniversary, if you will, for us. How long we've been doing this now?
Well, this is our beginning of our 5th year.
First show, the 5th year. So we've been doing this for 5 years. And what do we do? About 50 a year?
Yeah, we're doing well. This and last year we did, and last couple of years we've done 50, 52 a year. Yeah.
So you can do the math on how many times we've done this. And I need to sit down. I'm tired.
And they said we wouldn't last.
Yes.
Look at us now. It's really good. It's exciting. The show, the podcast has grown through the support of our listeners and our sponsors. And want to take this moment to appreciate everybody who's joined us in this journey and made this podcast as the success that it is.
Yes, we've got a big audience, and we've got sponsors who like what we do because it must be working for them. So, from me too, thank you to all of you.
Well, that about wraps it up for this episode. Before we go, I want to encourage our listeners to rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts, wherever you download and stream the show. Your vote helps other beekeepers find us quicker. Even better, write a review and let other beekeepers looking for a new podcast know what you like. You can get there directly from our website by clicking on reviews along the top of any web page. As always, we thank Bee Culture, the magazine for American beekeeping, for their continued support of Beekeeping Today podcast. We want to thank our regular episode sponsor, Global Patties. Check them out at globalpatties.com. Thanks to Strong Microbials for their support of this podcast. Check out their probiotic line at strongmicrobials.com. We want to thank Better Bee for their longtime support. Check out all their great beekeeping supplies at betterbee.com. Thanks to Northern Bee Books for their support of Bee Books Old New with Kim Flodham. Check out all of their books at northernbeebooks.co.uk. And finally, and most importantly, we want to thank you, the Beekeeping Today podcast listener, for joining us on the show. Feel free to leave us comments and questions at Leave a Comment section under each episode on the website. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks a lot, everybody.